And here we have the seared foie gras topped off with domestic sturgeon caviar. I repeated on autopilot for the 4th time that night at the restaurant. I was 22, graduated into the worst economic recession of our time, and my father had conveniently abandoned the family in a really nasty divorce. In true flight or fight response, I booked a one-way ticket to Vietnam, and I was just counting down the days to get the fuck out of Atlanta. I think the summer I lost my father, I lost a bit of myself, and I kept finding him in a series of terrible decisions, in my first taste of alcohol, in the arms of undeserving boys, in late-night drives down 400. He was everywhere and nowhere at the same time, but working at that restaurant saved me. It was this incredible escape. I became a trained foodie soldier in crime. I took orders. I made no mistakes. I had no emotions. It was exactly what I needed because at a time when my world was spinning out of control, I got to be perfect for 8 hours a night, and it was incredible to have some power. So when I was waiting on this middle-aged couple and they suddenly asked me my name, I snapped out of my daze and said, "What? Oh, my name. Right, Vicki Rockland, so nice to meet you." My new friends, Pat and Yonina, were this power couple from New York, and over the next 4 hours, we swapped stories and then emails, and I promised to stay in touch with them as I traveled through Southeast Asia. I wrote 26 emails that summer. Yonina was the only person to write back to every single one of them. When I ended up in a Cambodian hospital and almost got my leg amputated, she wrote me frantically, offering to fly over and help, which is crazy. She promised that if I ever came back through New York, she wanted to take me out to the best dinner of my life. And so, after 6 months of living on ramen, I did end up in New York City, and they took me out to Per Se. And I had the most incredible meal of my life. I had just lost a father. She was never able to have children. I was broke, living on my sister's couch, decked out in my backpacking clothes to work every day. She was the lead buyer of Daffy's, decked out head to toe in Chanel. We couldn't have been more different. And though we didn't know each other really for a long time, it felt as if we'd been family in a past lifetime. She started calling me her kid, and I affectionately called her my adopted mom. Fast forward to Valentine's Day 4 years later, and we were planning our first double date vacation. So it was Yonina and Pat, me and my boyfriend Brent. And we were so excited, and all of a sudden at the last minute, Yonina canceled, and I freaked out, so she wouldn't pick up her phone. I kept calling Pat, and finally he picked up, and through choked back tears, he said, "She's sick, Vic." I was like, "Okay, let's get her antibiotics. What's the problem? You guys have a personal doctor." He said, "No, Vic, she's not gonna get better. She's got final stage pancreatic cancer." And they gave her 2 months. I was so hysterical, I don't remember what happened to the phone. Pat's game plan was to give her as many perfect days as possible. So I'd go over every weekend and often after work and take her out to a mani-pedi or some new ritzy restaurant to keep a sense of normalcy. The first time I realized she was really sick was this gorgeous dinner at Maria. I was mid-conversation talking to her, and she fell asleep on my shoulder. I was so stunned into silence that this cancer was really here, tears streaming down my cheeks. When she awoke, she had no idea what happened. And that was just the first of every step of her life changing. I think that was the hardest part, watching her quality of life deteriorate with each chemo treatment. First, she was down to 88 pounds. Then she needed a breathing tube. And finally, a wheelchair. But God, did we have some amazing, perfect days. This one Sunday, Pat called me up and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know, going to the gym." He said, "Nope, we're flying down to Florida. We're renewing our vows. You're her maid of honor." So I went to the grocery store and bought these white roses and made some bouquet. And when she saw them, she broke down. I think we both realized she would never make it to my wedding, so we had to savor these moments all the more. And she had 6 suitcases for 6 hours, which I found incredible. But I remember putting on this dress that was about 4 sizes too big, through her breathing tubes, fixing her blonde wig, snapping on her pearls, and thinking how tiny and frail she'd become in just a few weeks, and yet how beautiful she'd stayed. A couple months later, it was my birthday over Thanksgiving, and we went back to Per Se, where it all started. Yonina pulled the cancer card, totally shameless, got us the best seat in the house. And she fell asleep on my shoulder again. But this time I didn't cry. I smiled. I pressed her cheek against mine and continued to talk to Pat about World War II history like it was the most natural thing in the world, because all that mattered was that she was here. And when she awoke, she handed me a little red box and said, "For my daughter, on your birthday, because we will love you always." And it was those pearls that she wore every day. A few days after New Year's, Pat calls me over and says she's in rough shape, which is the understatement of the century. Yonina's 27 tumors in her liver had blocked off her bile ducts, giving her a severe case of jaundice. I didn't recognize her when I walked in, so in an effort to stave off tears, I cracked a joke about how at a time like this she could possibly be rocking some Hermes branded socks. She laughed, and though we were feeding her water through a turkey baster, she had the spunk to reply back, "They're fake from China." And the whole room roared with laughter. That was our Yonina. So I spent the next 5 days rubbing her feet, telling her how much she meant to me, that I would save a seat for her at my wedding, that I would take care of Pat for the rest of my life, that I would name my firstborn after her. And she squeezed my hand each time, too weak to talk. And the next day she was gone. The woman that made me a lady, the woman that proudly called me her daughter when my own father willingly walked away, was gone forever. On Sundays, Pat and I go back to her favorite restaurants, honoring the traditions she started. And I always make sure to talk to my waitress, wondering how differently my life would have been if she hadn't talked to hers. I lost half my heart when my father walked away, but I gained all of hers in what I can only describe as the magical way the universe rights the wrongs of life. Thank you.
Victoria Ronkland.